Sony is not a company that should be trusted. They are the number one reason why we've never gotten a Bloodborne 2, and we shouldn't forgive them for that. But now a report is saying Sony may be buying FromSoftware's parent company, and this could turn out to be a disaster. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, obviously, Sony is a behemoth. Sony Interactive Entertainment is the world's largest video game company, only followed by Tencent and Microsoft Gaming, and even they are not on the same level. So Sony is always looking for purchases, they're always looking for ways to expand their business, and that leads to acquisitions. And now it's being reported that Sony may be poised to have another major weapon in its arsenal. Reuters is reporting that Sony is in talks to acquire Kadokawa, the parent company of FromSoftware, which is the developer of games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls. Now, we also have things like Armored Core. This would affect a lot of our favorite games. And From Software is a fantastic company. They've made some fantastic products in the past, and people at, of course, From Software have over the years been intertwined with Sony. From Software themselves have been with a game like Bloodborne, but unfortunately, while they have had a partnership in the past, an acquisition could be a very different thing, because that means that Sony would directly be telling them what to do, what to change, and could be looking over their shoulders. And From Software has a very fantastic formula going for them, and I obviously want them to have as much money to utilize as possible for projects, and Sony may be able to do that, but money does not equal success. We see that with franchises like Star Wars. After the Disney purchase, it really went downhill because they had a lot of money to throw at projects, but they were not hiring the right people. And while I want to have faith in Sony buying From Software because they see what a successful formula they have, I am still extremely worried. So the report says that talks are ongoing and a deal could manifest in a matter of weeks. Sony already has a 2% stake in Kadokawa and a 14% stake in From Software itself, but this would bring both entirely under its wing. However, Sony-owned FromSoft games would not be the only result of this acquisition, as it would be yet another path for Sony to control manga and anime properties when they already own an enormous powerhouse in that segment, owning the likes of anime streaming service Crunchyroll, which has already absorbed another anime staple, Funimation, in the last few years. And I do think that this is a major reason why they want to go through with this, because they would continue to become a manga and anime powerhouse like they already are. Don't get me wrong, but they would have a heck of a lot more influence, and that is very worrying. When they had, of course, done the Funimation and Crunchyroll merger, a lot of people were saying they already controlled an anime monopoly. Now those claims are going to get even worse, and what I care a lot about is truly From Software, and I know a lot of you guys would agree, but we all remember what happened with Bloodborne. That came out and they set it and forget it, and when Miyazaki took over, Dark Souls 3 was already really deep into production, and he said then that he's not really into making sequels, and since he took the top job, there have been no more sequels put into production. So I don't think that that would change either. But From Software doesn't own the IP for Bloodborne. Sony does. Nobody knows why Sony hasn't had FromSoft do something new with Bloodborne, even if like Miyazaki isn't directly affiliated with it. Even if he just says, okay, you can greenlight it and we can, work on this. Maybe he'd do a little bit, but that's been a major point of contention in the gaming industry because people really love Bloodborne and Sony could make bank off of it, yet it seems that they are really stuck on the idea of not doing anything further with it. Now, I obviously think that Bloodborne was an entire story on its own. I feel the same way with Elden Ring. Bloodborne and Elden Ring are absolutely phenomenal, some of my favorite games of all time, and I'd love sequels for them, but I don't think that we are ever going to get continuations of them. And to me, this is just extremely worrying because of how much more power Sony is going to have, especially, again, on the front of manga and anime properties. Plus, if all of this goes through, it means that they are going to have direct ties to other mega companies in the industry like Tencent. We heard at the beginning of the year that Tencent is working on an Elden Ring mobile game. So not only does that mean that Sony is going to potentially have a, big jump into the mobile industry, but they're also going to have direct ties to Chinese video game companies. And if you do not know, in order to publish games in China, you actually have to work with a company like a NetEase or a Tencent, so they're going to have ties there. And it becomes a slippery slope of, are these companies going to collaborate more in the future? Will Sony actually change the direction of their games so that they are more feasible in the Chinese gaming market? You don't know. I mean, it's a very, very complex discussion, but there's a lot of different angles as to why Sony would want this to happen. I just don't have a lot of faith in Sony because over the past couple of years, they certainly have shown that they really don't care about listening to gamers. Look at everything they're doing with PC games and the PlayStation Network requirements. Yes, initially with Helldivers 2, they had that requirement and then they backtracked, but that's the only game they backtracked on. Something like God of War Ragnarok, for example, has the PSN requirement on PC, and even though gamers have told them how they feel, these companies are really not listening. So I just don't want to sit here and say that this is going to be all rainbows and sunshine. And sure, maybe nothing major will come out of it, but why else would they be willing to buy From Software, or acquire them? I should specify. It would be a monolithic event within the gaming industry. I don't know if it would be quite the colossal purchase of like Activision Blizzard in terms of how people would feel. People were very upset when Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard, but I do think that a lot of gamers would not be happy. And so far, even just by this report, people are talking about how they're not particularly looking forward to this. Grums, aka Mark Kern, had said Sony is in talks to buy, the parent company of From Software. This will be a disaster. Sony has lost its way with PlayStation and investments like Concord. This is also true. Sony has put a lot of money into a lot of things that have not actually gone anywhere. So maybe they will change their tune and actually start giving gamers what they want, but I just have no faith. These large Japanese publishers have been flirting with DEI and ESG policies. When those have so clearly failed in recent times, none of this is good, and I hope the sale does not go through. People are also saying things like, yikes, this is not just Sony wanting From Software. Yeah, they've been trying to monopolize the anime industry for years. They also own Aniplex. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is just about From Software. I don't think that this is just about Dark Souls or Elden Ring. But I do think that that is one key piece of this entire puzzle. And I want to sit here and be positive because I love From Software. They are the only developer within the industry at this point in time that I will blindly support no matter what they're creating. I will always pre-order, I will always purchase, I will show up to support them. But this could be very bad news, not only for video game fans and for people who actually care about Dark Souls and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, From Software, but also for people who like anime and manga because this is just another step further in their monopoly strategy. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.